Switch 2 is an interesting console. Its target audience are children, but it's mostly man-children that actually buy the games, which is why it launched at the same price as PS5 at launch. And it set a new standard for game cost as well, $80 at launch. Now, this phenomenon where 30-year-old grown-ass men are getting excited over Kirby Air Riders, a baby game, is not so strange to me knowing the sheer levels of degeneracy we have collectively reached in 2025. But what is strange and what I would like to discuss in the video is not only the lack of titles at launch in terms of quantity, but also the increasingly lower level of quality when it comes to Nintendo games. Nintendo was synonymous with polish, with charm, with the kind of magic that made a game feel timeless. But the Switch 2 catalog feels rushed, derivative, bloated with microtransaction hooks, and built around gimmicks instead of heart. The sad truth is that Nintendo is no longer selling great games. They're selling the memory of great games. They're selling nostalgia, packaging it up, slapping a higher price on it, and letting the 30-something kids lap it up with tears in their eyes. And the rest of us, we're left staring at an empty launch window, wondering how a company with the richest library in gaming history can't even put together a decent roster of titles for their shiny new console. When I talk about declining quality, I talk about Zeldaification of every major Nintendo title that's apparently coming. Breath of the Wild open world concept was apparently so successful for Nintendo that they now intend to indiscriminately slap it over every single title. It's there in Mario Kart already, and apparently it's coming in the new Metroid game as well, and I for one hate the open world. The only open world game I could say I even remotely enjoyed was Red Dead Redemption 2. And that game had so much polish and content that you couldn't spend more than 10 seconds in the world without some random event happening to you, which always kept it interesting and fresh. You'd be riding across the plains and suddenly a stranger would call out for help, a rival gang would set up an ambush, or you'd stumble upon some bizarre little side story tucked away in the wilderness. The world felt alive, not because it was large, but because it was layered with detail, layers of humanity, danger, humor, and tragedy. Every inch of that game seemed like it had been touched by a human hand, crafted with intent, not generated to pad out a map. Even the animals behaved in ways that gave the illusion of a breeding ecosystem. Predators stalking prey, horses panicking in gunfire, birds scattering when you drew near. That's what made Red Dead work, the sense that you were part of a living, unpredictable story. The world wasn't just a backdrop for missions, it was the mission. Exploration rewarded you not with meaningless trinkets but with genuine experiences, stories you could tell your friends about, unique little moments that no other player might stumble into in exactly the same way. And that's the gold standard for open world design. It respected the player's time, it gave weight to wandering, it made even the act of moving from one town to another feel like a gamble worth taking. And that's precisely why so many modern open worlds fail by comparison. They give you empty square millage, but not life. They hand you checklists of collectibles, fetch quests, and barren landscapes disguised as freedom, when in reality it's just tedium stretched thin across a massive map. Red Dead Redemption 2 set a standard that exposed how shallow most open world games really are, and it's a standard Nintendo seems determined to ignore as they blindly slap the open world label on franchises that were never designed to support it. That's why driving around Mario Kart open world is bullshit, since there are none of these events or exploration worth your time, and since there are no rewards relevant to what the players care about. And that's the problem. Nintendo saw that Zelda sold like hotcakes and took the laziest possible lesson from it. People love open worlds. No, they love that open world because it has meticulous design, careful balance, and it plays into the story like it's another character. Instead of understanding why it worked, Nintendo just stamped the template onto everything, as though slapping a sandbox map onto a game automatically makes it better. But what we're getting isn't depth, it's bloat, empty space masquerading as content. Mario Kart used to be the gold standard for instant bite-sized fun. You'd sit down, fire it up, and within seconds you were in a tight, chaotic race where every item, every drift, every shortcut mattered. Now, you spend time trudging around a hub world in a glorified menu system, pretending you're exploring, when in reality you're just wasting time before doing the only thing anyone actually cares about: the race. Exploration without reward is not exploration, it's filler. It's the gaming equivalent of making you walk across a parking lot before entering a store. Nobody asks for it and nobody benefits from it. And if this is the future of Metroid, God help us. Metroid's identity has always been about tension, atmosphere, tightly designed experience, and claustrophobic space and alien environments. To dilute that into another bloated sandbox where you run across giant, empty, desert, barren landscape for the sake of freedom would be to completely miss the point of what made the series great in the first place. There's a reason Super Metroid is still revered decades later. It respected the player's time. It gave you mystery, atmosphere, and discovery without padding it out with empty meaninglessness. Nintendo, at its best in general, was about delivering this kind of essential experience, distilling gameplay down to the basics, to something sharp, to something immediate, unforgettable. But the Zeldification trend shows us that they've lost faith in that design. They've lost faith in the originality and creativity of the earlier years, and now they're a corporation. As a corporation, they're chasing numbers, they're chasing formulas, they're stretching their franchises thin, inflating them with meaningless content that looks good in a trailer but feels hollow when you pick up the controller. It's quantity over quality, spectacle over substance. And the worst part is, the fans are lining up to defend it, praising the Emperor's New Clothes because they're too invested to admit they've been sold smoke and mirrors. And don't get me started on Pokemon, where Game Freak's main effort in the past few years has not been to make a good game, but to combat any competition by patenting, watch this, summoning. That's right, they're patenting summoning monsters to fight each other. That's absolutely insane in the first place. But if they were making good Pokemon games, one could forgive them. Instead, they're making PS2 era graphics, $70 okay games with day one $30 DLC, which actually lets you have access to the full game. Think about that for a second. The highest grossing media franchise on the planet, bigger than Star Wars, bigger than Marvel, bigger than literally anything else, has the resources to make a masterpiece every single generation. They could create worlds richer than Red Dead, mechanics tighter than Elden Ring, visuals that put Final Fantasy to shame. But instead of innovation, what do we get? A glitchy, soulless product that looks like it fell off the back of a bargain bin PS2 disc. And they have the audacity, the arrogance, to slap a full AAA price tag on it with the promise that if you pay just a little more on day one, you'll get the real experience. That's not game design, that's ransom. And don't get me started on the patents. Again, I mentioned the patents. They're not protecting innovation. They're trying to strangle innovation. Imagine being so insecure about your own product that instead of pouring resources into making the next Pokemon generation the definitive monster battling game, you're spending your time making sure no one else in the world can even try to. It's corporate paranoia dressed up as strategy, and the irony is the competition they fear wouldn't even exist if they just did their damn jobs and made Pokemon great again. The tragedy here is that the fan base, once again, has been conditioned to accept it. They will buy the broken launch version. They will defend the frame drops. They will tweet about how actually graphics don't matter. It's about the charm. And then when the DLC drops, which is day one by the way, they'll rush to give Game Freak another $30, convincing themselves it's a fair trade because they get the access to the full game. What the hell is going on here? These people are deranged. And that's why Nintendo doesn't need to innovate. They don't need to make a polished Pokemon game when they can drip feed mediocrity and still watch millions fly off the shelves. And that right there is the true cost of Zeldaification, Pokemonification, whatever you want to call it. The slow, deliberate lowering of standards in exchange for guaranteed profit. The reason I conceptualized this video as a post-mortem is because I truly believe Switch 2 was dead on arrival. But I would be dishonest if I didn't mention a few silver linings. Number one is the first-party games, which are now far more prevalent on Nintendo's console, even day one. I'm talking Borderlands 6, which just came out and is running smoothly, unlike on PC. But also legendary titles like Cyberpunk 2077 or Elden Ring, which most people didn't expect. All that, however, will not be enough to save Nintendo's crippled reputation. Their console and games became a premium product for man-children rather than affordable fun for the whole family. And while in the short run that might increase their profit, in the long run it will hurt the essence of the company's identity. Because what we've really witnessed here isn't innovation, but cannibalization. Nintendo has traded immediacy for bloat, originality for formulas, and family-friendly accessibility for cult-like nostalgia exploitation. The Zeldaification of every franchise has stripped beloved series like Mario Kart and Metroid of their identities, replacing tight design with hollow sandbox gimmicks. Pokemon, once the crown jewel, has descended into a cynical cash grab, broken releases padded with day one DLC, protected not by creativity but by legal strong-arming. And all of this has been enabled by an audience that should know better, an audience of 30-something clinging to childhood franchises while paying luxury prices for mediocrity. So yes, Switch 2 has its strengths, big third-party titles, stronger hardware, a handful of technical victories, but these are bandages on a corpse. The heart of Nintendo, the spirit that once defined them as the master craftsmen of play, has been eroded by greed, by complacency, and by a fan base too nostalgic to hold them accountable. The result is a console that sold well but died spiritually on release, a hollow shell parading as a revolution. Switch 2 isn't the future of gaming, it's the autopsy report of a company that lost its soul.
Through the tears. Oh, it's gorgeous. Oh, what's right, Kylo? No fucking way.
Always be